So I've been thinking a lot about heretics and heresy, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. Heresy, in and out, this dynamic of in and out. And often I've thought about these things in terms of like a cell. If you think about biology and you look at a cell and a cell membrane, cells have what's called it's called a semi-permeable membrane. Or Peterson will talk about the hero's journey. Is you live in the walled garden, the protected, bounded, walled garden. In the hero's journey, sometimes it's to go outside that walled garden. Or you'll be cast outside where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth or something. Outside is where it's unsafe. You could even think about this at your house. Like right now it's below zero in wind chill. The boundary of the walls of this house, safety, right? And then outside is not safe. It's cold. You'll die if you don't have the correct garments, But there's always a balance with this, right? Things need to go in and out, or else things die. You could set siege to an old castle if they don't have a well inside, because people have to go out to get water. But even that's what a siege is you close off the cell membrane in such a way so much that you don't let things in and out, and eventually that will die. It's very, very hard to make a walled garden, a castle, or something that is completely self-sustaining from inside. And so at some point, things need to come in and out. A lot of this is tied to Peugeot's ideas of the center and the periphery, right? Gleaning the edges. On the edge of a map, there are chaos monsters, there are monsters, there are heretics, there are scary things on the outside, and the inside, the periphery, the center, is safety, is what order and chaos, known and unknown. You can call it the Tao. There is a reciprocity and a relationship between those two things. And part of this is connected to a body, not in the materialist frame, but my physical body is a boundary. But when you really, if you really think about it, and you really start to think about where the lines and the limitations of this body, it becomes fuzzier. I'm very familiar with my own body, but if you really start to, but a lot of that's narrative. A lot of that's a story that I'm telling myself. If you really start to analyze what is my body and think about it and break it down, you start to realize I don't really know what my body is. I just have a narrative for what my body is. Yeah, a canonization of the French. So I'm working toward this. He probably wouldn't, but I'm more of a boundary chaos monster than Peugeot is. There are things that I am more confident in. There's essentially nothing that I'm certain of. Because certainty to me is like the absolute closed wall. Absolute certainty is the absolute closed wall, which is dead, that's objectivism. That's where the world becomes a world of dead objects and nihilism. You're in the closed circle of the serpent and you can't see outside of it. Breath, air, you need air. If you don't have air, this body, if the breath isn't coming in from the outside, you die pretty quick. If food isn't coming in from the outside, you die pretty quick. And where are those boundaries and limitations? And everything's kind of interconnected. Now let's think about other bodies. Let's think about spiritual bodies, pattern bodies, abstract bodies. Uncle Sam, Santa Claus. Peugeot talks about a lot of these things. Are they real? Are they not real? This little corner of the internet. Let's think about this little corner of the internet. I think this little corner is something, but this little corner of the internet started because Jordan Peterson was starting a quickening. He was starting to revivify and quicken, I would say, the religious intellectual thinking in a way that was not happening in traditional institutional bodies of the churches. We keep talking about this stuff all the time. How come he can fill stadiums and churches are empty? Because the church thing is dead and people aren't interested in it, largely, and increasingly so over time. Secularity, post-Christendom, ex-evangelicalism, all that stuff. But yet now people are becoming re-interested in religion because of Peugeot, and then PBK is talking about that in a specifically religious context that is largely Christian, but also includes Judaism and I wish more self-identifying atheists and stuff. This thing has become too explicitly Christian. It feels too much like the thing that it was at first an antidote for, right? This is one of my, you could call it a fear or concern that I have with this little part of the internet, particularly the PBK section of it, is that I don't want this thing turning into the thing that it was an antidote for. that it was a solution for. Because this is what often happens, like in our fear and our safetyism to want to hold on to this thing and to set up boundaries and borders and make it a walled garden, because it's chaos. It's scary. Like, what is it? Chill. Like, you can have a walled garden, but it's when you make boundaries in this way, they're not absolute. There's a difference between discernment and like an absolutizing judgment, right? This is why I'm against confessionalism. I'm not a safetyist. They're all different forms of safetyism, and safety and liberty, freedom, are inversely proportional. Like, if you increase safety, you're decreasing liberty. If you increase liberty, it's not as safe. What do you want? Where are the boundaries between that? And yes, you should make discernments. You should live in the world. You should make boundaries there. But you cannot cement them and absolute them in time, or else you get into this Orwellian thing. Your life becomes death. Your safety becomes danger. Like, that's the Tao. What you intend, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The people who are more like conservative, safety-ish people in TLC who want to put in hard lines, hard boundaries, just turning this whole thing, again, that is an antidote, back into the thing that it was a remedy for, right? Or it was a remedy for this disease, and then they're like, oh no, it's scary now, it's bad, and then like, what's happening with it? Let's turn it back into the disease. No, that's an error that conservative people love to make, and it's a mistake. I think everybody needs to just chillax and calm down and learn to love. Again, it's the husbandry thing. It's the gardening thing. I'm fine with emanation. I'm fine with ideas. I'm fine with discernment. I'm fine with putting boundaries, putting up lattices, adding some structure, getting containers, defining things. That's all fine. But if you go too hard that direction, you will be. This is like with COVID. Also, people. Sometimes your cure will be worse than the disease. This is my problem with interventionism. Is like, if you get into intervention, if you want to start intervening in things and prescribing things and fixing things, maybe the unintended side effects, the things that you don't see in your solution, will be worse than the problem you're trying to fix. I think that's hard. That's a scary thing. We don't kick out Sam Tiedemann. We don't kick out the Jews. Hopefully we create a space that's hospitable and welcoming for the self-identifying atheist. This is a remedy for identitarianism. Let's not turn it back into identitarianism, please. Again, like, you can be right and be wrong, or be wrong and be right. You can be an Orthodox heretic. All the way through church history, this thing was anathematized and heretical, and then all of a sudden it becomes the orthodoxy later, Maximus is that way, like, they cut off his hand so he can't write, cut out his tongue so he can't talk, and he's dead, but now it's like, now Maximus is a saint, and he's Orthodox. So, like, that always happens. Like, that's what I'm talking about. That's the boundaryness that I'm talking about. If you were to make those boundaries eternal realities, unquestionable, unchanging realities, that dynamic wouldn't happen. That's what I'm talking about. You have to allow for the dynamism of faithful innovation. That's what a living tradition is it's something that's allowed to be faithful to what has come before, but also innovate and potentially correct or alter or change what has come before. But I think, conservatives don't like that. But like, you don't realize your conservatism is based on that. That's like some comment made. Like, the orthodoxy stands on the backs of heretics, What up, Gavin?
Hey, Luke.
The hard-walled garden doesn't work. It's dead.
Yeah, I made it. I'm still here.
There are levels of understanding, and some are seen as heretical at different levels. But that's very in line with, like, my understanding of spiral dynamics and what you see and hear. Like, it depends, at this level of the spiral, and they're all related because they're all kind of circles. But like, here, you're gonna just be like, well, that's bad and evil. This is also the Chinese farmer thing. But then all of a sudden you'll go through a death and rebirth and a resurrection, and all of a sudden you'll come back.
Well, that was related to what I was saying.
Sometimes heaven looks like hell, and hell looks like heaven.
Yeah.
You can't know what it is. It's hard to identify it.
Because at the highest level, all those distinctions again pass away because there's a relational unity behind all those distinctions. Right and left hand of God, sheep and goats, heaven and hell. Like there's something behind all that. What is hell is this is part of the whole point of like saying somebody like me is a heretic. Yeah, from your super narrow, exclusivist, insular tradition. But like, how about all the other traditions?